Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the waters of Southeast Asia to explore a critical, yet often overlooked, aspect of the Vietnam War, the incredible array of US warships that defined naval power during the conflict. From the late 1950s to 1975, the United States deployed a massive fleet, and these ships weren't just floating fortresses. They were the backbone of American military strategy, shaping everything from coastal blockades to intense riverine combat. Let's start with the giants of the sea, the aircraft carriers. These floating airbases were the heart of US air power in the region. Legendary carriers like the USS Enterprise, the USS Coral Sea, and the USS Kitty Hawk steamed off the coast of Vietnam, forming what was known as Yankee Station. From their decks, a relentless stream of aircraft launched into the skies. Jets like the A for Skyhawk, the F for Phantom II, and the A-6 Intruder became symbols of American firepower. They flew countless sorties, striking targets deep within North Vietnam, hitting supply lines along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and providing crucial close air support for troops on the ground. These carriers allowed the US to project power hundreds of miles inland, demonstrating how naval aviation could dominate a conflict even when the main fight was on land. But air power was only part of the story. Naval gunfire support was another pillar of US strategy, and this is where cruisers and destroyers came into play. Cruisers like the USS Boston and the USS Newport News were armed with massive guns that could unleash devastating barrages on enemy positions along the coast. Their shells targeted fortifications, supply depots, and troop concentrations, providing vital support during major ground operations like the Tet Offensive and Operation Starlight. Imagine being a Marine pinned down on the beach, and suddenly, the thunderous roar of a naval gun from miles offshore turns the tide of battle. That was the power these ships brought to the fight. Alongside the cruisers were the destroyers, the versatile workhorses of the fleet. Ships like the USS Maddox, the USS Turner Joy, and the USS Cushing performed a wide range of duties. They provided naval gunfire support, defended the carrier groups from air and submarine threats, and conducted patrols. Of course, the USS Maddox is infamous for its role in the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964. The alleged engagement with North Vietnamese torpedo boats became the justification for a massive escalation of US military involvement in Vietnam. A single event at sea that changed the entire course of the war. Now, let's move from the deep blue water to the murky brown water. The geography of South Vietnam, particularly the sprawling Mekong Delta with its thousands of miles of rivers and canals, presented a unique challenge. This was not a place for massive warships. Instead, it called for a new kind of naval force, the Brown Water Navy. This specialized unit, officially known as the Riverine Force, was designed to control the inland waterways, which were vital supply routes for the Viet Cong. The stars of the Brown Water Navy were the patrol boats, river, or PBRs. These small, agile fiberglass boats were fast and maneuverable, perfect for navigating the narrow, winding canals. Armed with machine guns and grenade launchers, PBR crews engaged in some of the most intense, close-quarters combat of the war. They patrolled day and night, interdicting enemy supply sampans, inserting and extracting special forces teams, and frequently finding themselves in ambushes. Life on a PBR was incredibly dangerous. The crews faced constant threats from snipers, rocket-propelled grenades, and underwater mines. It was a gritty, personal kind of warfare, a world away from the carrier decks on the open ocean. Alongside the PBRs were the slightly larger swift boats, or PCFs, which also played a key role in riverine and coastal patrols, showcasing the adaptability of US naval forces. Another essential component of naval operations was amphibious warfare. The US Marine Corps has a long history of hitting the beach, and in Vietnam the Navy provided the platforms to make it happen. A whole fleet of amphibious assault ships was deployed, including LSTs or landing ship tanks, which could run right up onto the shore to unload vehicles and supplies. More advanced were the helicopter carriers, like the USS Tripoli and the USS Iwo Jima. These ships, designated LPHs or landing platform helicopters, acted as mobile launch pads for helicopter-borne assaults. They allowed Marines to bypass heavily defended coastlines and strike deep into enemy territory with speed and surprise. During major battles like the Battle of Hue, The ability to rapidly deploy forces via helicopter from these ships proved absolutely decisive. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the unsung heroes of the fleet, the logistical and support vessels. A modern navy is a thirsty navy, constantly in need of fuel, ammunition, and food. A fleet of oilers, ammunition ships, and supply ships formed a floating logistical chain that kept the combat vessels operational. Imagine the coordination required to refuel a massive aircraft carrier at sea while it is still conducting flight operations. It was a monumental task that happened around the clock, and we can't forget the hospital ships. Vessels like the USS Sanctuary and the USS Repose were floating hospitals, equipped with state-of-the-art medical facilities. They provided life-saving care to wounded soldiers, sailors, and Marines, often receiving casualties directly from the battlefield via helicopter. These white ships, marked with a large red cross, were a symbol of hope and healing in the midst of a brutal war. They saved countless lives and represented the humanitarian side of the naval mission. The U.S. Coast Guard also played a significant and often overlooked role. Under a mission codenamed Operation Market Time, Coast Guard cutters patrolled the extensive South Vietnamese coastline. Their primary job was to intercept weapons and supplies being smuggled by sea to the Viet Cong. These cutters, both large high-endurance cutters and smaller medium-endurance cutters, formed a coastal blockade, boarding and searching thousands of suspicious vessels. Ships like the USCGC Monroe didn't just patrol, they actively participated in combat, providing gunfire support and working closely with Navy units. The Coast Guard's contribution was vital in strangling the enemy's logistical network from the sea. By the end of the war, the U.S. had deployed an unprecedented naval force in Vietnam. It was a fleet of incredible diversity, massive carriers projecting air power, cruisers and destroyers providing heavy firepower, amphibious ships launching assaults, and small patrol boats fighting in the rivers. Each class of ship, from the largest carrier to the smallest PBR, had a unique and vital role to play. The legacy of these warships extends far beyond the Vietnam War itself. The conflict was a crucible for naval innovation. The lessons learned in carrier jet operations, riverine warfare, and ATC logistics profoundly influenced U.S. naval doctrine for decades to come. Strategies developed in the Mekong Delta and the Gulf of Tonkin would be adapted for future conflicts, from Desert Storm to modern counterinsurgency operations. The Vietnam War proved that even in a conflict dominated by ground combat, control of the sea and inland waterways could be a decisive factor. In conclusion, the story of U.S. warships in Vietnam is a story of power, adaptability, and innovation. These ships were more than just steel and firepower. They were instruments of national policy, platforms for incredible bravery, and the floating homes for hundreds of thousands of American sailors and Marines. They shaped the course of the war and left a lasting mark on naval history. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this look at naval history interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into military technology and history. Let us know in the comments what other topics you'd like to see covered. Until next time, take care.